Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Berechot, Chapter 3, Halacha 4 continued, and we don't have a lot left today to cover in the rest of this halacha. But there are very important points, which is why I wanted to leave just this for its own shiur. Now, we're going to get over to this position that was adopted in Baal and what was going on in Baal, and all talking about the Baal Keri. Gemara says that Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha said they conduct themselves there in Baal in accordance with the lenient rulings of these three elders, in accordance with Rabbi Eli regarding the first of the fleece. This, by the way, is going to be a dictate from the Torah that every year when you shear the sheep, you have to give the first of the shearings to the Kohanim. That's in Devarim 18:4, and the Torah does not specify the amount he needs to give, but the sages dictated that it's at least 1/60th of the total yield. And you can find out more about that in Masechet Peah, chapter 1. We cover that in the Gemara, Daf Yomi Gemara shiur over there. Anyway, it also comes up with how the Rabbanim come up with 1/60th, and it's a lot more connected to the Torah than you would think. Anyway, the Gemara continues and says, in accordance with Rabbi Yeshaya regarding kalayim of the vineyard, that's kalei kalayim, and these are going to be mixtures that's going to be in a vineyard where you're planting something like barley in a vineyard or something like that. And there's a lot of Torah prohibitions. One of those that's like kalayim is if you take two different species of animals and you put them together to pull the same plow. That's going to be another one. The most famous one is going to be mating different species of animals together. You can go on the internet and you can look at pictures of lion and cat hybrids. You can look at pictures of goat and sheep hybrids. You can look at pictures of hybrids from dolphins and whales. They actually have those. Killer whales. Anyway, it's not something that we're supposed to be doing. And then you have the planting of different species of crops together. Like in the case of planting barley next to vineyards. That's very serious because you have to take it out. You're supposed to take it out and burn it. You're supposed to burn all this stuff. And by the way, you're not allowed to profit from it or benefit from it. And then you have shatnez, and shatnez is a very famous one. That's where you're going to be mixing wool and linen. The law for shatnez is wool and linen. So that's going to be the thing. Now, if you're mixing like polyester and wool, or you're mixing silk and you're mixing linen or something like that, it's not going to be a shatnez issue. It's just wool and linen. And you can check more about this in Leviticus 19:19 and Devarim 22:9. Anyway, we're going to get into why the concerns about kalayim are going to be particular versus, say, the other ones. And the Gemara is going to continue. It's going to say, and in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda ben Basira regarding the Baal Keri. Now, the Gemara is going to explain why each of these three have a lenient ruling. And the statement is in accordance with Rabbi Eli regarding the first of the fleece and refers to that which the Brisa teaches. And Rabbi Eli says the mitzvah of giving the first of the fleece operates only in the land of Israel. So you have a lot of laws that are in the land and out of the land. You can see more about this in the parallel in Bavli in 136a. And there's a derivation from a Gezerah Shava that established the first of the shearings and Truma. And just as the obligation to tithe Truma applies only in Eretz Yisrael, so too it is derived that the obligation to give the first shearings to the Kohen also applies in Eretz Yisrael. Now, one of the things is that sometimes you had people out of the land coming and adopting some of the things that are laws for the land. And that's why it would be a lenient thing. That the halacha is that this is in the land. So, of course, if you're doing this in Bavel, this would be something that is if you're doing it, it's derabanan. It's not a deraita thing to do the shearing of the flock and giving that to the Cohen over outside in Bavel. That's why it's going to be lenient. And the Gemara is going to continue, and it's going to say that the statement in accordance with Rabbi Yoshia regarding Kalayim refers to that which a Brisa teaches. Rabbi Yoshia says one is never liable for violating the prohibition of a vineyard unless he sows wheat, barley, and grape with a single thrust of the hand. Now, this is going to be a debate that's Tanaim. Some of the Tanaim are going to say that the prohibition of Kalayim of the vineyard includes planting just one seed of grain in the vineyard. And so, since it's a mixture that would be grape and grain, and you'd be creating this mixture, that would be enough. Now, Rabbi Yoshia is limiting the prohibition to one who similarly plants three seeds, the seeds of grapes, together with two foreign species, being wheat and barley. And Rabbi Yoshia is interpreting the biblical law on this in Beurim 22:9, saying that you shall not sow your vineyard with diverse kinds, to mean that when you sow your vineyard, you are to plant a grape seed, and you may not mix it in with diverse kinds, with other types and varieties of seeds. So this is going to be a big debate in Kalayim. You can find out more about this in Kalayim chapter 8, halacha 1. And I want to point out what the Lev Yerushalmi says about this in Seif 3. He says that the Yerushalmi in Kalayim chapter 8, halacha 1 seems to give a different explanation of Rabbi Yoshia. The prohibition is violated when someone sows two foreign species, being wheat and barley, in a vineyard that already existed. And the verse is read to mean, in your vineyard you shall not sow diverse kinds. However, the Brisa cited here, which speaks of sowing three species with a single thrust of the hand, accords with the Bavli. That's also going to be, by the way, also it's going to be a debate whether it counts as whether you're throwing it with the hand, or whether you're planting something where it's already been there. So the statement, the Gemara is going to continue. It's going to say the statement in accordance with Rabbi Yudah ben Basira regarding Baal Keri refers to that which the Brisa teaches. Rabbi Yudah says the words of the Torah do not contract tuma. So the Gemara now is going to get to two incidents in which Baal Keri is going to go risk his life to immerse. And this is a very famous story about an Amaretz who it's just a crazy story about an Amaretz. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Yosef bar Halafta, this is going to be the Tana, by the way, was traveling on a donkey in an alley at night, and the donkey driver was walking behind him. And as he came near one of the large ditches filled with water, the donkey driver said to Rabbi Yossi, that man, which means referring to himself, wants to cleanse himself. And basically, he was doing it because he was a Baal Keri, and he wanted to immerse himself in the ditch that was filled with rainwater. So the Gemara is going to continue and say that Rabbi Yossi said to him, do not endanger yourself. And Rabbi Yossi was basically afraid that this man was going to drown, either because, says the Haredim, that he could not see properly in the dark, or because the ditch was so deep that it would be dangerous even in the daytime. But the incident is going to serve as a basis as an assertion that the immersion at night could be dangerous. And the Gemara says that he replied to Rabbi Yossi, and he says, but that man needs to cleanse himself from the sin of cohabiting with a nida who is a married woman. So, the Haredim points out that he had cohabited that night with the wife of another man when she was a nida, and in view of this great sin, he believed that his obligation to immerse himself was greater than usual, and alternatively, he thought that the immersion would atone for his sin. Now, that immersion only purifies yourself. That is not a thing for tshuva, and going into the mikveh is not a thing to clean your sin. It's only a thing to purify yourself. In other words, that you can handle holy foods and things like that. You can handle utensils without making them tamei. You can handle truma without making it tamei. You can handle truma, separate truma, and give it to a kohen, and the kohen can have it where it's tahor. That's what it's for. It's not to be a thing of atonement. Now, the Gemara is going to continue with this story, and it says, even so, Rabbi Yossi said to him, do not endanger yourself. Now, the Haredim points out that it's written in Devarim 4:15. It says, you shall greatly guard your life, and this is in fact what Rabbi Yossi is referring to. So what a story, huh? And so the Gemara is going to continue. It's going to say, when Rabbi Yossi realized that the donkey driver was not listening to him, but immersed himself in the ditch, he said to him, let that man go down and not come up. And it happened to him. The donkey driver died. So there's a lot going on here. I want to point out from what the Mara Fulda says. The Mara Fulda says, because he disregarded the instructions of a sage, okay, that's why he died. Now, there's a rule in the Torah and in all the oral law that if you knock down the fence of a sage's, that you will be bitten by a snake. And in fact, that's what happened to the donkey driver. Now, all the other stuff about being with a nida and being with a married woman, he gets death for that anyway, okay? And so even if you have an adulterous affair, and even if you make tshuva, you still are liable for the death penalty. The only thing that happens if you do tshuva for being with a married woman is that in olam haba, or in the next world or whatever, that the weight of your sin when you get punished is going to be lessened. In other words, it's only going to ameliorate something in the next life, but it's not going to do anything for canceling the death penalty in this life. So if you are with a married woman, and again, there's rules on it, if you are with a Jewish married woman, that you get death penalty and you can't undo it. There's no way to undo it. You can't change it. She can't change it. She also gets it. And your tshuva is only going to clean things up for, some spiritual thing after you die. Whatever the accounting and system is for that, that's all that's going to do. But in this life, you still get death. And it's very good to make tshuva, even for something that, that you can't fix in this lifetime. It's still worth making tshuva. Now, the Sanhedrin in Bavli in Sanhedrin 37b is teaching that although courts have not been able to adjudicate capital cases since the destruction of the temple, there are 4 types of execution, and those continue to be given out by heaven. Now, we have a God who is continuously creating, and in fact, it's heresy to even say that, God created the universe and then stopped getting involved. In other words, there's an argument in deism that came very popular with the Christians in the 1600s and in the 1700s as well, where they basically said that God is like a clockmaker and that he made the clock and now everything just runs and God basically is not involved. That is complete heresy. It's complete nonsense. We have a God who's continuously creating, and even though you don't have a Sanhedrin who can give out the death penalty today, when people are doing things that deserve the death penalty or makot, you still get your lashes and you still get your punishment. On the other hand, if you're going to do mitzvahs, you're going to be paid for those as well, because God is always and continuously evaluating and judging, and he is the true judge. So we have a case here where you have a person who deserves death, and this death, by the way, would be by strangulation for adultery. Now, in this case, we would say, well, how would this person die by strangulation? And in fact, he goes and he dies in a ditch by suffocating. Basically, he drowned. Right? That would be the same as if he had died in that way. Now, this donkey driver is guilty of being with a married woman, and for that punishment, it's strangulation. And guess what? Heaven went and killed him by drowning. Now, if that woman were a Coheness, then she would be liable to death by burning. And, you could expect that, something like when somebody's caught in a fire or something like that, that is how that person's life would end. Something like that. Anyway, heaven definitely killed him by drowning. This is a powerful story because we see that there's measure for measure, and we see that we have a God who is continuously creating, and we have a God who is involved in every aspect of our lives, and that divine providence shines on every person. Now we have another incident. It says that Rabbi Yosei ben Yosei, it's a great name, was traveling on a ship, and he saw that someone had tied himself with a rope to the ship and was lowering himself into the sea for the purpose of an immersion. Rabbi Yossi said to him, he says, "Do not endanger yourself." And he replied to Rabbi Yossi, he says, "That man," referring to himself, "needs to eat." In other words, he was a Baal Keri who required immersion before eating. Now, we know that eating, you're not allowed to do it without the required blessings, and a Baal Keri may not recite the blessings. Now, Bnei Moshe says that when our Mishnah says that a Baal Keri is allowed to vocalize biblical blessings and review rabbinic blessings mentally, it was referring only to one who lacks water in which to immerse himself, whereas this man did have water. So what's going on over here? And the Gemara says that Rabbi Yossi said to him, "Eat." In other words, Rabbi Yossi permitted him to eat without immersing himself first. So why would that be? Marav Fulda says that the man could recite the blessings and eat, and Rabbi Yossi ruled that since immersion would be dangerous in this case, the restrictions normally imposed on a Baal Keri do not apply here. In other words, Rabbi Yossi is saying, yes, you are surrounded by water, but you are on the sea and you're on the ocean, and lowering yourself down by a rope, first of all, is kind of idiotic, but second of all, is really dangerous. And it would be like as if you don't have water, so therefore fulfill this and eat as if you didn't have water around you. Don't be so literal that say that this dangerous water over here in the sea is water. Don't count it that way. So the Gemara says that man needs to drink, he added. And Rabbi Yossi said to him, "Drink." And when they reached the port, Rabbi Yossi said to him, he says, "When we were there on sea, you were allowed to eat before immersing yourself only because of the danger to your life that the immersion would have posed. But here on dry land, where immersion is not hazardous, that man is prohibited to taste anything until he immerses himself." So here we have a thing to help us, to guide us, that it shows how important it is to guard your life, and that how important it is for life, and that it comes above even doing this mitzvah of immersing yourself, so that there's a leniency here. And it says, because the Torah is supposed to be something, to live for, not to die for, and that it's, the Torah brings you life. So going and putting yourself into the sea to go do a rabbinic thing is not the point. But now that his life was not in danger, he said Here's what the halacha is now. Since your life is not in danger, go and immerse yourself. And the Gemara now is going to conclude its discussion of Ezra's decree with the following comment. It says that Rabbi Yanai said, I heard that some treat Rabbi or Ezra's enactment leniently and others treat it stringently. But everyone who treats it stringently will enjoy a long and pleasant life. In other words, that, and it would apply even today, that even if you were to be like a chassid and to be very strict about it for yourself, that they're promising you that you'll have a long and a pleasant life. And the Gemara is going to explain Rabbi Yanai's teaching, and they're going to say that some treat it leniently by washing themselves in drawn water, and others treat it stringently by immersing themselves in spring water. So I want to point out what's going on with this, and Rashi's talking about this in the parallel of 22a of the Bavli in Berechot, and it's going to say that some people may have relied on Rabbi Yehuda, who rules that it suffices for a Baal Keri to immerse himself in 40 say of drawn water, and an alternative view is that a Baal Keri who's sick need only wash himself in 9 kavin of water. And the Bavli is reporting in 22a and b that several sages relied on this leniency because they held that Torah scholars had the status of a sick person in regards to being physically weakened by the intense exertions of Torah study, says the Rashi in 22a. And by the way, the mention of spring water is not exactly precise. One who immerses himself in rainwater is also going to be deemed to have acted stringently, says the Haredim. Now, spring water is going to be required only for the immersion of the Zav. That's in Leviticus 15:13. And all the other immersions, even by biblical law, those can be done in rainwater. And that's a deep point about it. But you do get merit, and you do get a special promise for a long and pleasant life if you're going to be stringent on it. If you want to know how to be stringent on it, go ask a Haredi rabbi, and they will help you to do it in a way that is good for you. Anyway, have a great day.